In addition to nourishing the soul and spirit, we also care for the health of the body. Visit the Viva Natura online store and choose from the shelves of health at www.vivanatura.hu.
We warmly welcome the dear viewers of BNTV Viva Natura. You are now watching our promotional series where we are talking with Mr. Zsolt Varga, who is introducing NLS technology in Hungary. This technology has very old roots, as even 20 years ago it was already from Russian knowledge, so the ancestors of this device were already present. To understand what this was, who was behind it, let's go back a bit to what kinds of devices these were, because many people will have memories of this. Maybe they held such a rod in their hand or did something with it.
Yes, these devices, roughly speaking, these arrived in Hungary years ago. These were the ones you could put your hand on. You could hold the rod, or they put a strap on your hand, or even on your head. In fact, I know that even today, these devices were the forerunners of this technology, obviously with a lot of benefits and many features that paved the way for the development whose next step is now represented by this device. This is no longer a sound frequency device, but rather it works with light, so we can perform measurements using light, and we can practically carry out a complete assessment of the body's condition with it. We can examine the human body at 980 points with this device. Since we can go down to the DNA level with it, meaning we can even examine the DNA strands at 327 points, and the device is capable of performing a complete body assessment in about 15 to 20 minutes.
How does this device work?
During the assessment, you will naturally need to securely place the headset unit onto your head. There are two small light-emitting diodes located on each side, which are positioned to correspond with each of your ears. And these actually address the organs one by one. These LEDs will stimulate the organs through the brainstem, and the echo generated there, when the Doppler effect is measured, will be assessed. This is the NRS technology, and as its name suggests, it does not use a linear mathematical equation to calculate the energetic state of the specific organ being addressed.
So previous systems worked by having a standardized state and then using biofeedback to see what state I am in compared to that, right? But this always varies completely from person to person, doesn't it?
Obviously, there are standards. So we researched the liver, for example. When the Russians developed this technology, they researched, just to give a random example, the frequency of the liver when has. And when they research it, this is obviously the ideal state against which it will measure whether there is underactivity, overactivity, or if it is functioning properly. The software will actually display this very nicely visually, and from this we will, of course, be able to draw conclusions about their, let's say, within the given organ system, because here the main organ systems will be nicely separated, and then within that organ system, by examining the correlations, we can see, for example, what condition the digestion is in.
Since with parasites, as we can see, the fundamental problem with our food pyramid is that we constantly consume a lot of carbohydrates. Carbohydrates continuously produce fungi. Let's not list them all now. These produce fluids that are perfect for our parasites to thrive in. They arrive and these parasites hide heavy metals in their bodies. And when we eliminate the parasite, we'll talk about parasite elimination in a moment, the heavy metals remain, and then the body really doesn't know what to do with them. This is already a complex issue. And now, on one hand, we're moving toward assessment and then toward solutions. Besides assessment, do you also try to use some kind of treatment, or?
Of course. So here, again, we can examine at the organ level which pathogens are active in the body. And there, it will specifically highlight in red for us if, for example, there is a pathogen in the salivary gland. We will see it marked in red. And not only can we assess and identify which pathogen has proliferated in the body, but we can also eliminate them. So it is absolutely crucial to understand that when, for example, we initiate a course of medical treatment after a thorough assessment, the two must work closely together in harmony. Because if I only provide supportive medical treatment to a biofeedback, as you mentioned, then the condition will improve, but then it will relapse. So there will be this ping-pong effect if we haven't eliminated the pathogen, since they will always hold back that particular organ. It's very important here that we can identify which pathogens are present, and then we can regularly eliminate them as well.
So then, just like with other methods, how many times does it take, for example, to eliminate a pathogen from the body?
Well, not on consecutive days, of course, so our partner recommends about 2 or 3 sessions per week, mostly We see that it is needed when someone has symptoms of depression or symptoms related to panic disorder. In those cases, there is always an overgrowth of fungi.
Will fade away.
Now, not only can we identify these, as I said, but we can also understand them. So many partners or guests who come to us, and I can see it on them, or they themselves say that they are struggling with depression. In those cases, it is very important that immediately targeting the pathogens becomes one of the main approaches, because by ridding the body of these pathogens over a few weeks, by reducing their numbers, their overall well-being improves significantly.
What about adolescents?
It can absolutely be detected and treated. For example, we treated a family like this. There are ways to do it, where we were able to identify it, and the whole family, including the children, had adolescence-related issues because they got infected from their pets. In that case, too, we were able to thoroughly investigate and treat it very effectively. So adolescence is absolutely treatable.
Both of us, after all, grew up under the influence of Hulda Clark, that's right, and she was quite back in the day. And you can see that these pathogens are such clever devils that when I start eliminating them with frequency treatment, they can easily move around within the frequency range. How can the system keep track of this so that they can still manage to escape?
Here we will research them again every single day. So
every single time again?
This is daily, so it doesn't work like I scan once and then just treat, because every single day we can scan once per hour and treat in a limited amount, obviously within the limits of what I can perceive. And then when I scan, the machine will adjust the treatment it gives based on the current state.
There are threshold values here, I suppose, because I've gone through several tests, starting from the Mora and all sorts of things, and there they examine, I don't know, he said they check 600 different things at once, and there are threshold values within those, and then it creates a frequency accordingly, which it works with.
Yes, that he uses Rife frequencies, so that's what he uses there. And it's the same, it's something necessary for the body, but if it becomes overgrown, then it becomes harmful. So as we'll see, there are results in the research that at first seem surprising, like why would you need a lactobacillus there? Well, it's needed for digestion, but it's not good if it becomes overgrown either. That's why we always research it daily, and when we see that the results are changing, then of course we know that the digestive problem will resolve there.
We're dancing around the microbiome here, but we can see that the stove, so to speak, is here as well in this case. If the digestive system is in order, the gut-brain axis is in order, then really this inner doctor, the immune system, is also in order. How do we examine the immune system? Is there a specific method for this, or do we draw conclusions from the overall picture?
We draw conclusions from the overall picture, yes. Digestion is the foundation. It really is the starting point. So if someone comes in and wants a health assessment, we always start with digestion because it will have an impact on many areas, starting from skin problems. If someone has leaky gut syndrome, obviously we will look for the root of that here as well and treat it accordingly. So it's very important to note that digestion is a crucial factor, and of course it depends on what kind of problem someone has. So if someone comes to us, unfortunately we see that they usually don't arrive with just one problem. If there is a digestive problem, there may already be an underlying cardiovascular issue or perhaps a neurological problem as well. Naturally we identify these areas, but we simply don't usually. But rather, of course, it's appropriate to start with the issue that, as I usually say, causes the biggest problem in their life and most negatively affects their everyday life. It's best to begin with that problem and then gradually address the others as well. So here, it's also important to understand that this is not a fast train. So there is no passing lane here. Instead, there are specific periods that must be observed. So obviously, in a general case, let's say someone has a urinary tract infection, for example, related to excretion. If we investigate here, we see if this is an acute problem for them, then we say it can be nicely resolved within a few weeks, eradicating the pathogen and treating it along with supportive therapies. But when it's a problem that has persisted for 4 to 5 or even 8 to 10 years, it takes at least 4 to 5, 8 or even 10 months before we can set it right. But at least we have the opportunity to do so.
If the famous poet Endre Adi had actually known you, do you think you could have helped him? By the way, it seems that various sexually transmitted diseases are rapidly spreading once again, despite the undeniable fact that so nobody likes to shower in a raincoat, let's just forget about it. But on the other hand, I see internationally that now they're making indicators, like there are condoms that show by their color what kind of sexually transmitted disease someone has. And I recoil thinking, my God, what's going on?
Well, that's right. Just yesterday, a lady contacted us saying that her son-in-law has a persistent, unpleasant discoloration on his penis, a fungal infection, and the doctors don't know what's causing it. And I told her, of course, that we can take a look at it. So we have the means to examine this.
Well, if something comes up, I also tend to catch a chill easily. So I usually run to get some D-mannose, which is really good for urinary tract infections, but that's not the direction we're going in right now. What I've noticed is that as we age, all these countless little problems cause a chronic internal inflammation, which can't be measured from the outside, just like it will be the same. But the kidneys, the heart, they simply can't handle these chronic inflammations. And now, let's talk about lectins, anything that also enters the human body through nutrition. Not to mention glyphosate, which is a very harsh antioxidant, right, that we get every day. So the protection against antioxidants is no longer effective. So what comes to mind is that the human body is like a complex tangled web that can only possibly be managed in a complex way. How do you approach this issue?
Absolutely. So we always treat organ systems. It's very important that if someone comes in and says that they only have a problem with we won't just look at the gallbladder, but obviously we'll examine the entire digestive system. If the problem appears in several areas, then we have the means to scan the whole body. In this particular case, with a male patient, we can scan the body at certain points, and in the case of a woman, at a few more points, at 980 points. And then wherever something shows up, we can see it. I'll show you this. The machine displays it in color when we've scanned an organ system. It will indicate with different colors. If it puts a green dot next to it, then basically no problem was found. If it's red, then there's an issue within that organ. And if it's a burgundy dot, then there's already a chronic problem.
I don't think there was such a system in the old practices either. For me, there's just one thing. Healing organ systems, while I say that we don't heal diseases, we heal the patient. So the whole thing is incredibly complex. I'm constantly nervous here about putting this on my head. That after the show, I might take a look at that system. I'll tell you what's on my mind, and that's important, right? You see very well that doctors who go there need to be open-minded, those who accept complementary medicine. They accept what summa relicis is, they accept what chakras are, they accept what meridian points are. I saw for a moment here which points are examined, and then the big question is, if someone wants to buy one of these for their family at home, how much time does it take for them, first of all, to do the assessment? Is there a process for this? And then, for example, to treat themselves? Can they use this kind of frequency treatment on their parasites?
Yes. We distribute 3 types of devices. Our latest device is the Bioplans device, which is specifically recommended by our Chinese partner for family treatments. It absolutely does not require any special equipment.
So this isn't Russian, but Chinese already?
The technology is based on Russian know-how, but it's manufactured by the Chinese. So they sold the technology, you see, and it was developed by the Russians in the 1980s, but those researchers are no longer alive, and they sold it to the Chinese, and now a Chinese partner manufactures it, and basically they are the ones doing the development on it now. But the core of all the research and the whole field of wave genetics behind it was laid down by the Russians. For example, the Bioplans device is excellent for allowing someone, even without any special training, to check at home in a family setting what is going on in their entire body, what their energetic state is. And then there is a very supportive feature as well, which is also found in this device, and we call it autotherapy. Autotherapy is when, as researched by Russian scientists, the device itself tries to restore a given problem using the frequency that has been identified for it. So basically, I entrust it to the device to try to restore the given problem to the best of its ability. In this case, I don't need to know whether the liver is connected to the small intestine or large intestine or anything like that. So there is no anatomical... I don't need any prior training. It does it for me. That's why I say that anyone can use our little device very easily. I even managed to teach an 84-year-old lady how to use it, so anyone can learn.
And this jolly joker, how often does it miss the mark? Do you understand my question?
Of course, of course. Naturally, we always explain that what we see here are energetic patterns. So in fact, the device is very sensitive, and in many cases, we can even detect issues that have no physical symptoms yet. It is absolutely crucial and essential to keep things in proper perspective if we see a specific area that appears to be problematic or concerning. We need to carefully assess how advanced that area is, or precisely at what particular stage or phase the developing illness currently is. But this is exactly where autotherapy is so beneficial, because it will always provide just enough treatment to fully restore and revitalize the individual's overall energetic state to the level necessary for their continued improvement.
You mentioned this Trojan village earlier, and the parasites. This simple little device can check for the same thing. So it can detect, for example, if someone is infested with parasites. Because honestly, as we sit here, both of us probably have a few billion of these unwanted tenants living in our bodies.
Well, that's absolutely true, because with this device we can check and investigate all the active pathogens, and I have never found anyone with fewer than 90 active ones. That is, those marked in red, which means they are currently putting immediate strain on the body. So there are always more than that. That's absolutely right. It all comes down to what kinds of foods we eat, what drinks we consume, and of course the combination of these will determine the outcome, as well as what kind of air we breathe in. There are thousands of factors that can obviously cause various problems, and this is exactly where our small device offers a really good solution.
That's why I want to bring this up, because people are watching VNTV, and tomorrow they'll be ringing our doorbell asking about the small device. But I would only give it to them after first assessing what kind of problem they have. Then let them use the device for 2 months, then let's go back and check again to see how effective it was.
That's right. So we placed a very strong emphasis, and I can say that we are unique in the world in this regard, that if someone wants to buy a device, they can come to us in Zuglo, and before purchasing the device, they can try it out. So obviously we put it on them, we do the measurements, and they can see for themselves whether the results that the device will provide are valid for them on the one hand, and whether then we will teach them how to use the device afterwards. In addition, we also organize training sessions, so if someone wants to in the future, there are 2-day seminars focused on operating the machine, as well as workshops. Obviously, it's very important. You're absolutely right about that no one should be left alone with just the device and told to start working. Obviously, when we got involved in this 5 years ago, my wife and I also bought a small device because we wanted to assess our family.
Marini is asking, 450,000
forints is the price of our smallest device. In terms of capabilities, it can assess at 850 points just the same.
How much does the assessment cost before we discuss it?
It's free. So with us, trying it out is free. So if someone wants to buy a device, they can come and try it out. Of course, those assessments are free. And then the next device, which we call the intruder, the BioPhilo intruder, is primarily recommended for therapists. And also what we see on the table, this device, this is our tracker device, which we can already recommend to therapists and even to research doctors, because it has functions and additional services that even a doctor can clearly find the things that are important to them. In fact, doctors here are just starting to discover this device. So now several general practitioners have bought from us. They've realized that one of the doctors who preferred to remain anonymous said that finally, after 10 years of practicing medicine, he feels that the past decade was almost entirely about administration or writing prescriptions and dealing with the 120 phone calls he gets every day. So he finally felt that now he has a device with which he can once again feel that he is able to help people.
And that he can retrain his mind to assess what the real problem is, instead of just prescribing what Big Pharma recommends for the illness. Well, this
obviously requires a great deal of openness, so actually, the person I was talking about was a gentleman in his 60s, so obviously he is already in a position to think about all this a bit differently, but of course a certain openness is necessary. So generally, the therapists who come to us and purchase a device, they always have some prior engagement with consciousness on some level, and they want to delve deeper into it, or they are involved in naturopathy. In fact, recently, a lot of naturopaths have found us in the past second. I actually see the great benefit of these machines in the fact that if someone, for example, goes to such a therapist and gets assessed with this device, then at least the therapist can finally point that poor person in the right direction. Someone who often comes to them and has already been struggling for half a year, 3 or 4
years. You mentioned wave genetics in passing, right? Now we can really see that we're talking about one of the most powerful tools of our current era. Because who could put generators out in the and they can program diseases for me. So from this perspective, it's a very well-intentioned thing. I don't even assume otherwise. But it could also be a weapon in anyone's hands on the part of the programmers, let's say, over there in China.
It's possible, but...
Okay, but this is a serious problem after all. We've seen people being thrown out of windows because of this.
It's possible, but based on our 5 years of experience with this device, according to our experience, we can't cause any harm. In one thing, If someone were exposed to pathogens constantly on a daily basis, then it could disrupt the human body. But for example, I can't overtreat with it. So our body can only absorb as much as it needs. This device works with very subtle effects. There is absolutely no radiation or anything behind it that could cause an irreversible process. Here, the body will always only absorb as much as it needs.
As we can see today after COVID, turbo cancer is one of the biggest. So the transcriptors pass on this horror, and I've also read in the DNA materials about the ways it can be influenced and how cancer patients, for example, can use the base device for stimulation. I know you shouldn't say anything you're not allowed to, but...
Yes, so basically what I see is that this device can help almost immediately when it comes to eliminating pathogens, because in people who have developed cancer, there are always pathogens involved. There is a very high level of pathogen proliferation. So eliminating pathogens is one of the main focuses we usually mention. And of course, it also depends on the type of cancer. For example, if someone has pancreatic cancer, then obviously we will treat the digestive system, the pancreas, and the lymphatic system, and include pathogen elimination in this. The lymphatic system is important because the destroyed pathogens need to be removed from the body. So it is very important that we do not
just leave all of them behind.
Heavy metals can also be detected, by the way. How much is present in our body, what kinds of allergies are in the body. So in fact, there are many areas where research can be conducted. That's why I say that these devices, for the user, for the person using them, truly become good and useful tools in their hands. Because if someone doesn't want to dive deep and really just wants to assess themselves and treat themselves with autotherapy, they're already doing a lot for their health. But if they want to go deeper, that's when I usually say that the rabbit hole goes very deep, so you can really immerse yourself in this to the extent that you can conduct very in-depth research. It all depends on how much time someone wants to dedicate to it.
There is still one small problem here. As we mentioned, our nutritional pyramid has a lot of carbohydrates at its base, sugar, etc. And all of this leads to our acidification, which is a breeding ground for pathogens. In fact, I dare say that it is one of the factors, there are others, behind the proliferation of cancer cells. Those who are not willing to change their lifestyle, well, here they are. So as long as you are not willing to change, you can't even recognize your illness, you can't know what you have, and that's why it can't be helped. There are no miracle cures, neither this nor the other. So you need to change your lifestyle and way of thinking in a complex way. And now here comes the big thing. So those who are constantly mentally, because I see a lot of intuitive developments, so I create the illness with my mind, with my thoughts. So now we are already entering the realm of epigenetics. Can something stimulate through the brain? Through the gut-brain axis, I influence what kind of bacteria I have, but in the other direction, my thoughts determine what kinds of bacteria are in my body. To what extent can this complexity be influenced?
Absolutely. So obviously, yes, behind every disease, there are, of course, those problems we bring with us or generate ourselves. And in the device, for example, what fears the person has, what kinds of relationship matrix problems they have, whether in parent-child relationships or even in work relationships. We can examine and treat these problems, these fears. So with this device, and this is one of its great advantages, whatever we can identify in it, we can also treat. So with this, we have the opportunity to trace things back to their root. For example, if someone has a pancreatic issue, I can look to see what fears or what problems exist and what mental or emotional issues they are struggling with. Then I can intervene there and address the problem at its root.
And right there, we are already at German medicine, at family constellations.
Yes, that's very good. Yes, what you said, because what happens, I usually say when we hand over the device to someone, that if someone undergoes a health assessment and the problematic areas are revealed, then even if they want to heal someone, for example, they will see a liver profile there, a problem, or even a serious liver problem, they start the treatment. But if the gentleman goes home and downs half a liter of vodka every night, then no matter how hard he works with the device, he still won't be able to heal him. So lifestyle change is the fundamental issue. Obviously, where there is already a cancerous process, a more serious diet must be introduced. And
do you give advice on this, like nutritional advice or something?
Yes. So my colleagues deal with this, yes, and of course they explain what the problematic things are. where it's worth mentioning if someone comes to them, where it's advisable to make changes. For example, if there's a digestive problem, what kind of diet to follow. If there's some other psychological issue where it's worth looking into that, and of course that it's worth making changes.
So, to summarize what we've talked about so far, it's a pity. This is a system that's been known for a long time, right? Because those who have made it to such a place were familiar with this system, its current distributors, and it's not from the Russian side, but they know it from China, where there is continuous software development, I suppose, because as diseases evolve, development is necessary.
There wasn't, of course, before, so obviously things related to this have been continuously added there.
So, what's the situation with the mRNA responses? I know that this is what destroys our entire body because it directly interferes with the gene section, and from then on, it's a ticking time bomb in the human body. What can you say about this?
This lets us check we can examine the DNA RNA strands at 327 points with the device, and we can investigate these strands where it finds a problem, and for example, where the strand is damaged, say after a COVID vaccination, we can treat these energetically in the same way, trying to restore the previous states. This is also an important factor, so we usually say that it makes sense to set up a treatment in this device by first checking which areas are problematic. We will find those areas with treatments that support them, and at the same time we will eliminate pathogens. And for those who have received a COVID vaccination, we definitely recommend scanning the DNA section once a week and treating it with autotherapy.
Now, practically everyone has had COVID, but even those who are unvaccinated are considered vaccinated nowadays because everyone has received COVID through the informational field or through food. Now, this is the transcription factor. When during cell division I pass on the information, it cannot be removed from the... That's why scientists around the world are standing with their arms spread, wondering how they're going to solve this issue, and it's a ticking time bomb for humanity. So whoever will be able to help with this, even you are only speaking about it cautiously, but that's to be expected. There's something interesting by your left hand. At first I thought it was a tea holder because I would have brought one myself.
Yes, that is absolutely correct.
Let's show it to the camera as well, please.
The technology itself, it wasn't just the headset device at first, but the Russians actually developed this little device for space research back in the 1980s, or rather the predecessor of this device. This is a Tesla oscillator coil. The function of the Tesla oscillator coil is that we don't necessarily have to use the headset unit, but we can also assess the person remotely through a scalar emitter as long as they leave us some DNA. If someone leaves behind hair or nails in a small bag and we place it here on top of this scalar emitter, then the machine can connect to the person through their DNA, assess them, and even treat them with this device. And if
I'll give you an example. This is Russian knowledge that I've learned as well about how to create a phantom body. I can create a phantom body by providing my data, the local field. The slogan is based on this, and with this information the Russian can identify me, so to speak, through an egregore. To identify me without a nail or hair sample, they see me through this. Is sending hair or nails still even worth it?
Well, it works to such an extent that not only this remote device, but there is another remote device before this one, which we call a black box. It's a little black box. And for example, it can work based on a photograph as well because it connects through the morphogenetic field, so it can retrieve information from there too. In this story, the DNA only functions as an antenna to connect. It absolutely works, even using just a photograph, as odd as that sounds.
Such valuable knowledge comes together here, which was the Garvey principle, right? They use numbers to create group consciousness through which they infiltrate. But this wave genetics, this is a weapon today. It was used in the Iraq War, wasn't it? When they influenced the soldiers, etc. They know how to regulate beta waves. That's my disposition, and we have every category to do anything with wave genetics that they can do with me, and from this point on, every device that deals with wave genetics is life-threatening.
On this basis, every device that uses electricity and radio waves is dangerous because you see nothing. So when we meet someone or talk about this device, of course people are skeptical, and I truly understand that. Especially here in Hungary, we had our own miracle healer who tried to heal people from a distance, and people